Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the She Network. We hope you've been enjoying our webinars and content, and a massive hello to anyone who's listening for the first time. I've got a question for you. Do you identify as a serial apologizer? Do you find yourself saying sorry when there's nothing to be sorry for? Maybe it's a sorry, do you mind if I ask you a question? Or perhaps a yes, sorry, I'll get that to you. If this sounds like you, then you'll love today's episode, which is all about how to stop apologizing. I'm thrilled to be joined today by Tara Rule, a positive psychology coach who has vast experience working with women to help them unlock their true potential and create a life they love without fear. Tara is a big believer in taking control, and today we'll be sharing her advice on how to ditch the apologies and own your space. Tara, hello. How are you today?
I'm very well. What a fabulous intro. Thank you. So I'm hooked already and I'm talking about the subject.
Yeah, it was so great speaking to you before this webinar, and we're very excited to hear all about what you do and your toolkit. Are you happy to share a bit about your background with us and our listeners?
Yeah, definitely. So I have kind of a heavy background in tech. So I worked in tech for about 20 years or so. And I grew to be quite a senior leader in a big company. So I worked for a huge American company and I was a senior director. So I had a big role. I was head of global business operations and I had a team of 30. So I had a kind of a very normal corporate job, but very senior as well. A lot of responsibility, a lot of fast paced. But I found out years ago the thing that I loved most was helping people and coaching people. So about 8 years ago, I became qualified as a professional coach. I then got qualified as a positive psychology coach. And I kind of figured out how I can do as much of that coaching stuff that I love that gave me energy in the day job. And so I had a few years where I was going, yeah, I'm loving the corporate life, loving that I'm coaching a lot of people. And then I realized actually the thing that was stopping me going out and running my own business was kind of like fear. And go, what if I fail? What if I let everyone down? But then I decided, no, I decided I had a lot of coaching to help me decide that actually it was right for me. So I left corporate life almost 2 years ago. So I think it's 19 months ago. And I'm now the CEO and founder of my own business. So I do coaching, workshops, and retreats. And there's two kind of core people that I help. One is busy professionals. So busy professionals, like probably most people that are listening to this one today, like you ladies, who want to feel more confident, who want to figure out how they succeed without sacrificing everything, who's juggling everything, so wants like a better work-life balance and to feel more fulfilled. So that's really the core of who I help. But I also help leaders. So I go into companies and I help leaders create more of a positive culture where their teams are engaged and energized and motivated. So that's kind of a whistle stop of a little bit of what I do.
No, fab, and congrats on I say your new business. You've obviously had almost 2 very successful years, so it sounds like it's going really well. And
Yeah.
actually, I was introduced to you by Louise, who is a founding partner of the She Network and Deputy Director of Comms and Public Relations at the University of Chester. And Louise, you've actually worked with Tara in the past, and I know you're also very excited for this chat.
Yeah, hi everyone. Hi Tara, lovely to see you again.
Thank you.
Yeah, so at the university we were fortunate to have Tara come and speak to us as part of our diversity festival. And I just loved the session that Tara ran, and it was all sort of through COVID times, so it meant that obviously we had an online session, and then sort of did the usual connecting after the session, and then I've just followed Tara and kind of fangirled a bit on LinkedIn, and then I've done a couple of other sessions. And I think when we were discussing as a She Network in terms of some of the topics, this is something that we all sort of felt that we've been guilty of, in terms of the sort of the notion of apologizing too much. And of course, Tara popped straight into my head because I vividly remember a particular session where Tara was talking about this, and I didn't think I was someone that did apologize much. And then listening to Tara, I thought, oh my gosh, I do always say, sorry, can I just ask, or sorry to sound silly, but yeah, so I thought Tara is the person that we need to know. And then obviously having followed Tara, I knew about Tara's book and Stop Apologizing. So yeah, it just felt like a natural fit. So yeah, I'm super excited as to what extra gems. I've got my pen and paper ready because you can always keep learning, even though I think I don't apologize anymore. So yeah.
Oh, well, fantastic. On that, Tara, I think a good question to start with is Why do you think women do tend to apologize so much?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things as to what causes it, but also I just want to touch on something Louise says, which is we're not always aware that we do. So there may well be people that go, oh yes, I do, but there will be a lot of people that go, I don't know, I don't think I do apologize. But when you hear some of the things that I'm saying, it's like, oh yeah, I do that. So we're not consciously going, I need to make sure that I say sorry when I'm sending this message, or I need to make sure I say sorry when I'm sending this email or having this conversation. We just do it. And specifically your question about why women tend to do it more, I think there's really three core reasons why. The first one is that when we are growing up, and I say this is all about, statistically and overall, of course, there will be the exception. This isn't for everybody. But typically, girls grow up being told to play nicely, avoid conflict, play nicely with everybody, while boys are more likely to be growing up being told to be more assertive. So right from a young age, we're being told, play nicely. Come on, don't argue with them. Let them do that. So we're taught at a very young age, and it then kind of becomes something that we end up doing in years to come. Another core reason will be because of the fact that women tend to be more empathetic. So empathy is a higher trait seen in women than men. Again, there will always be the exception. I'm not saying everybody. However, when empathy comes through in communication styles, it can sound a bit more apologetic. It can sound a little bit like less confrontational, but we're just being empathetic, but it just comes across like that, how we communicate. And then the third reason really is around the fact that often when women work in a more male dominated environment, it's kind of going against the norms a little bit to be really assertive and to be kind of confrontational. So we kind of soften it a little bit. So we tend to soften our style because we don't want to offend people. So we kind of learn that to fit in, I need to sound a bit more apologetic because I'm going against the norm. If I just walk in and go, right, I've got this, I'm owning this. So I think there's a few different reasons why.
Louise, did any of those time with you? I know you said that you used to apologize, and I suppose another question after that is, since you've apologized less, have you noticed a change in how you work and maybe how people respond to you in the workplace?
Yeah, it's a really good point actually, because I think one of the points that Tara touched on that I then recognized myself was in emails, because I think of myself as quite a confident woman. I'm quite guilty of going into meetings and not consciously, but spreading my stuff around and doing a bit because that's just kind of who I am. I'm happy to speak up. But actually I realized in emails I was quite often saying, oh, apologies for the late response or something, because I think, well, that's quite natural. So sorry, I'm being a bit late. But then it would be things like, oh, apologies about something that I didn't actually need to apologize at all. And it's almost like you want to be sort of uber polite, and actually apologizing doesn't necessarily make you polite. So I still just this at the beginning of this week, I found myself writing, oh, apologies, but we're going to need to, I thought, no, I don't need to say I still have to keep, I really keep it at the front of my head, really, when I'm communicating. And I do think it makes a big difference, Marcella, if I'm honest, because I certainly know when I'm dealing with, especially, again, sweeping generalization, other women, I find that the women that have inspired me or that I respect, who are certainly in a leadership position, but also, other peers who don't continuously apologize, I feel that they have a slight, maybe gravitas is the wrong word, but there is a sense of they know what they're doing, and they can understand the message that they're trying to convey. And it might be that they've responded late, but there'll be a reason for that, so they don't need to apologize for it. And I think it's how you sort of frame that rationale for whatever you would normally just say sorry about. So rather than, oh, apologies, can I just ask, it's much more powerful to hear somebody say, I'd like to ask a question about, can I just take you back to that point you made about XYZ? So for whatever reason, I do think it has it has an impact. And I've certainly when I first heard Cara speak, I was in a different position, and I then had a one-to-one session with Tara, and I'm now in a more senior position. So, I can speak from the horse's mouth. It works.
But it's
I love that.
great to hear that you can see you can see it yourself, Louise, like in the workplace, you can see the impact when people do apologize and when they don't apologize. And
Yeah.
I suppose just touching on how it can be damaging to getting your voice heard or getting that progression. Like, why is apologizing a kind of a damaging trait, Tara?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of reasons, and I'll then kind of explain why as well. So one thing could be you're less likely to make an impact because you're too busy, you're softening your language by apologizing. So if you've got a really great question, but if you start it off with, sorry, this might be a stupid question, but it's like, well, who said it's going to be a stupid question? We're telling ourselves that. So we're less likely to make an impact. We're less likely to influence or to be as good as influencing. And we're effectively giving our power to other people. But we're not, as I said earlier, we're not conscious of it. We're not there thinking, do you know what? I'm going to hand all my power over to you right now by saying sorry and putting myself down. We're not doing it consciously. We're doing it subconsciously. Um, and there's a little bit around kind of why you're apologizing. So, although I spoke a little bit about why women tend to apologize more, it's really important to know, why are you apologizing? So, I've had people say to me, I feel like I don't deserve to be in the room. I feel like I'm quite lucky. I feel like I don't deserve to be here. I feel like I have to be perfect. So, if I'm not perfect, I feel like I need to apologize. Everybody will have their own unique why. And even if we had, 10 people listening to this that all said, oh, my why is because I feel like I'm not good enough. Actually, if we dig a bit deeper, where that came from will all be different because we've all had different experiences. So I think there's an element to really dig into, why do you feel like you need to apologize? But the bit about that impact that you said, the bit that I really want to share is around that giving our power away. So what I find fascinating is that we have about 60,000 thoughts every single day, and 95% of them are in our subconscious. So effectively, our brains are really powerful, but also really lazy. So we're not here consciously thinking, right, I need to blink, I need to breathe, I need to swallow my saliva. Like, our brain's just doing it. It's driven by our subconscious. So we're only kind of aware of 5% of our thoughts. So if I say, sorry to interrupt, sorry, might be a stupid question, sorry to take up your time, our brain isn't going, oh, hang on, what do I want to think about? It's going, hang on, they've apologized. Well, if they've apologized for taking up my time, I'm really busy actually. I don't think I have time for this. Like, why should I listen? If somebody just said, sorry, this might be a stupid question, your brain, your subconscious is going, hey, you're being asked a stupid question, so you don't need to listen right now. So a lot of it is in the subconscious as well, which we go, oh no, I don't want to give my power away like that. So yeah.
It's almost like before you've even opened your mouth, you're putting yourself on the back foot by saying sorry. You're not owning what you're about to say, and the people receiving it aren't going to take it seriously.
Completely. Yeah.
So, as a behavior that is probably very automatic for a lot of people, what steps can be taken to stop apologizing or get it out of your vocabulary or, emails?
Yeah, so I think there are two key steps. I'd actually love to hear from Louise as well in a minute to go, what were the things that you actually did as well? But I think the two key things, firstly, is to understand why. Why are you doing it? And the funny thing is, if I'd have written this book that 5 years ago, so I've got the book Stop Apologizing. If I'd have written it 5 years ago, I would have gone straight into, here's all the tools. Here's what you can do. Here's what you can say instead. However, the bit that I've realized through my kind of own coaching journey and all the coaching that I do is actually understanding why we do it is going to be the most important thing. Because I could say to you, hey, here's what you should say. Instead of saying sorry, say thank you. But if deep down you still have that belief that I don't deserve to be here, I have to be perfect, I'm not good enough, or whatever that noise, I call it our inner critic, is saying to ourselves, we're not going to actually make the change. So we need to kind of dig a little bit deeper and understand why we're apologizing in the first place, and then challenge it to go, is it true? Is it true that I'm not good enough? Is it true that I have to be perfect? And actually, what is a more helpful thought? To go, you know what? I'm human. Everyone makes mistakes. Or I am good enough. Or I do deserve to be here. Or I've worked hard for this. So whatever it is, but to reframe some of those beliefs, I call it listening to your inner cheerleader. So I think that is the absolute key thing. And I never would have like written about any of that writing this book 5 years ago. But I do think that is the absolute foundation. Then once you've kind of started building up that self-confidence, that inner confidence, that inner cheerleader, that inner self-talk, then we can go to the second step, which I would invite everybody to write down and start becoming aware of your go-to phrases. So it could be, like Louise said, actually it was in emails. So have a look back at your emails and go, how often do you start with sorry and what do you then follow it with? So it could be where you're doing it. It could be messages, it could be Slack, it could be conversations. So where are you doing it and what are you saying? And write down your go-to phrases. And then start looking, go, okay, what could I say instead? Listening to your inner cheerleader and to go, right, what could I replace that with? And in the book, I've got a whole list of replacements. I'm happy to share a few with you now, but it's about getting personal and to go, what do you say and what would be more helpful? But Louise, I'd love to hear from you. What are the couple of things that you think you did that kind of helped that shift for you?
I think exactly as you've just said, in terms of doing that real self-reflection. And I think as to why I without sounding completely self-assured, I didn't, for me, it wasn't about not feeling that I didn't deserve to be in the room or that, you know, I wasn't good enough. It was more, I think I'm still sort of in my early 20s and in my first role as a PA, and that my inner me is constantly a bit like, oh yeah, thanks so much. And I always refer to myself as a bit of I'm like a puppy in work, in that, you know, I go away and get a bone, come back and go, da-da, and then I want them to pat me on the head and I go, okay, great, and then I go off again. And so part of that makes me want to sort of almost go into that submissive. I can be very confident and I will deliver and I always meet my deadlines, etc., etc. But I always defer to senior people, especially, into that, oh yes, apologies for that, I'll get that to you now. And so I thought, actually, that is not what they need. And wake up and smell the coffee. You're a deputy director. That they've believed in you, you know, that you are where you are because of what you're producing. So you don't need to be apologizing in that way. Because I noticed, without sounding, you know, terribly hierarchical, I wasn't doing that to people I was managing or other colleagues. It was to people that were in a sort of more senior position, for want of a better phrase. And the second reason was it was that the fear of things like, can I just ask a stupid question? Because that was the only time I would maybe use it verbally, was because what if everybody else knows this and I'm the only person in this meeting that didn't quite pick up on why X, Y, Z? But invariably, when you ask the question, you see everyone else in the room going, well, I was thinking that. Yeah, I wondered that as well. So
Yeah.
actually, and there is no, we all know that phrase, that there's no such thing as a stupid question. And quite often it will be useful for whoever is running the session or meeting to think, oh, yes, I didn't make that clear. So da da da. And the other thing, just finally, is around the language piece and looking back at your emails and how you say things. I noticed it was a of, you know, oh, could and should and would, and I thought, no, I'm changing my language to will, and, you know, a lot more definitive in my answers, because that comes across strong to people who are managing you, and therefore creates that extra belief that you're going to deliver. But also, as a leader, I think of myself as being a really good, strong manager. They don't want should, would, could. They want we will. So yeah, the self-reflection piece was really good. But Marcella, you must have, like, you know, you've been such a formidable force within your career and having your own super successful business, and now in your role, like, how have you ever had to navigate some of this, or do you see it in your team members, for example?
So I don't think I apologize lots, possibly subtly at times, but I have seen it a lot over my career and mentoring people and my team as well. And probably not as effectively as Tara has outlined there, but trying to think of like little tips to help people kind of own their space and bring ideas and be confident with them. Back in the day, I was a personal trainer, right? And I trained a very impressive lady who would say sorry all the time when I was training her, and she's really, really high up in the corporate world. And we worked a lot on like, why are you saying sorry? Like, you've got a team of like 400 people and you run X, Y, and Z. And anyhow, there was a burpee penalty every time she used to say sorry, and that was one process to make her stop saying sorry. But we did, like, from a psychological point of view, we worked together very closely on it, and you know, by the time I'd worked with her for about a year, she wasn't saying sorry. She said, actually, I'm not saying sorry that much at work, and I, you know, I am here and I'm strong, and but like you said, Tori, there's a lot more to it than just the sorry that you see on an email, or the sorry that comes out of your mouth. And I think listening to you both, it would be great to get your thoughts, Tara, on what's a practical solution or next step for somebody that might be in say a meeting where there's a lot of direct people saying, well, I think this and I think that, or no, that's not something we should go with. You've got an idea, you're feeling a bit tentative about saying it, or you're not sure if it's going to land well. Like, how could you prepare going into that meeting, and how could you land your idea or get your voice heard in that scenario?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of things. So it depends whether you're going in like preempting this, or whether you're just in the meeting going, I'm in the moment and I've got this thing. So let's assume you're in the moment. So you're in this moment, you've got this idea. Often what can happen is we go, oh, I've got an idea, I've got a question. But then that inner critic starts going, oh, hang on a second. Or what if everybody thinks that's a rubbish idea? What if they all laugh at you? And it will start catastrophizing. So I would invite people to kind of be really hyper aware in that moment. If they are starting to doubt themselves, to go, what am I telling myself right now? And then to go, right, and is that true? Because most of the time you're going, no, people aren't going to laugh at me. I'm going to be okay. And then to go, right, what do I want to tell myself? What do I remember? What do I want to remind myself? What do I want to remember? So it could be, I deserve to be in this room. I've got good ideas. It doesn't matter whether they like my idea or not. But actually just having that little bit of a self-talk if you're in that moment panicking, because otherwise you'll just be thinking, listening to that negative voice. So I think that's one of the things I would say. I think there's another tip that I would give, which is if you know that's something that you tend to do, then you can prepare in advance by having some really clear openers. So, for example, rather than saying, sorry to interrupt, just to be able to go, Louise, I have a question. It's like so much more effective than sorry to interrupt. So just say their name. Louise, I have a question. Or Louise, I've got an idea. So much more powerful than sorry to interrupt. I think there's also another way that you go that you can think about how you interrupt by stating the intention. So rather than going, oh God, like I've got an idea that they might not like, and rather than being self-deprecating in it, to be really open and go, hey, I want to share an idea that I don't think we've touched on yet. And it might be a bit of a curveball, but I'd like to put it in the room. So you're kind of saying what you're doing. So that would be my other thing. If you're there going, hey, I know this is something I do, proactively think of what are a couple of different phrases you can say to insert yourself in that conversation. How does that sound?
They sound great.
Yeah.
I remember there was somebody that I was speaking to recently about exactly that, about how to enter those conversations and do it confidently. And I said, even if you're on Teams and you've got like a stress ball, but if it's really hard, you just give yourself some comfort whilst doing it, and just like you said, line up your plan of attack. And even if you just do it once in a meeting, it'll be a success because you've shown yourself you can do it.
Yeah, completely.
So Louise, I'm going to ask you a question.
Oh, great.
Learning from Tara. In institutions, particularly those working at universities, there's a lot of pressure at all times. If you work in marketing or comms or recruitment, it's, how are the numbers? Where's the creative? Has this gone on time? Can I have a lot of kind of high pressure, high stress environments. And I suppose a sorry default could be very easy to go to, but sorry, I haven't got around to it, or sorry the numbers, or sorry, we haven't hit our target. When there's lots of plates spinning, how are you managing lots of stakeholders with lots of different expectations, who are all looking at very specific KPIs and deliverables that involve a lot of people, but probably come to you?
I think, again, taking on sort of some of the lessons, as I say, I referred to earlier, that I was fortunate to have a one-to-one session with Tara, and we were talking about all sorts of things, and one of them being about how that confidence in the pre-bit before you're going into meetings. So it could be when you're reporting on figures, or when you're reporting on whether a campaign's landed, etc., etc. And Tara was kind enough to do a bit of a mock sort of session with me. And one of the things that came across was that I was sort of going, and she said, look at your body language as well when you're, if you think, oh, it's not quite the answer they want. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's so powerful. So that's another one in my locker that I always think, right, think about how you're owning the space and how you're presenting yourself. But you are absolutely right, Marcella. The sector at the moment, obviously with universities, is particularly tough for everybody, but particularly within marketing, comms, creative, and working with agencies and all of those things. It's all about the impact. The communications, the marketing, it's the impact, the so what. And it's also very subjective. So lots of people say, well, I don't like that design. And you think, yeah, but there's a whole thought process and insight that's gone into this, and research, and it can be dismissed very quickly if it's not to somebody's liking. So managing that is, I think that's where you really have to think about being a strong leader. And also having that confidence that you are the expert in your area. So you might be presenting to senior colleagues who are experts in their fields from sort of running an institution strategically, etc. But the reason you are in your post is because you are the expert of your area. And for me, it's about remembering that when you are presenting back, and also being on the front foot. That's probably my top tip, is don't wait to be asked, where are we with the figures, or where are we with that campaign in terms of impact numbers, etc. Get on the front foot. So I am always the one knocking on the door to say, here's the latest report, here's the latest, and also to remind colleagues that the nature of our work is fluid, and we have to respond. Not everything is going to work all the time. And what is important is that we learn from what hasn't worked, and spend some time thinking, why didn't that land? Oh, hang on a second, maybe there's this. And also, as I think I've mentioned one of our previous webinars, where we're very fortunate in the sort of higher education sector, and this applies to agencies as well, is that generally speaking, people are very generous with their knowledge sharing. And that is so important. And we're so, of all the sectors I've worked in, I've never worked anywhere where people are so happy to share, oh, try this, or we've tried this, oh yeah, no, that didn't work for us either, etc., etc. So I think it's about having that, as I say, having that confidence to remember you are the expert, and to be on the front foot in terms of, don't wait to be chased on anything. Always try and present, because then you're not reacting, you're being proactive. So therefore you're naturally going to feel a bit more confident, because I'm bringing you this information rather than, oh, they're chasing me about this. So yeah,
I love that.
that's it.
And it feels like once you get to the stage where you're not apologizing and you're owning it and you're backing yourself, you can actually enter a new tier of conversation through doing that. And that is the being proactiveness that you mentioned, Louise. And I don't know if you touched on this in your book, Tara, but what's the impact of stop apologizing? Like, where can people go once they have closed the door on that?
Yeah, what, as in like the future?
Yeah.
Seriously, I think like the world is your oyster, genuinely, because I think when you are able to talk more confidently, when you are able to genuinely believe in yourself and not be driven by fear, then anything's possible. There's a massive difference around being driven by fear and having a real kind of identity attached to how we work and what we do, versus going, no, like I am not the work I produce. So for example, Louise talking about like some of the creatives. If people are there going, if you judge whatever I've created, whether it's an image or whether it's a written, if you give me feedback, if I have that as a personal attachment, it's really hard to progress. It's really hard to stretch, to put yourself out there. So once you learn to go, actually, if you don't like the thing that I've written, well, that's okay, because we have a difference of opinion. And there may be things that I can learn from it. There may be things that I can tweak from it. There may well be the go, no, we're going to do it anyway. But when we detach that personal self-worth with the thing that we've done, the thing that we've created, then we get to go, hey, now I'm invincible. And it's an element kind of from myself, from coaching as well. if I only spoke to people and proposed coaching packages to people that I was convinced would say yes, then I'm going to really limit myself. So actually, I celebrate whenever I propose to a client to go, hey, I've got an offer that I think will be amazing for you and I think that will help you. Whether they say yes or no is no personal attachment, and there's no kind of self-worth I attach to that. But I know that I've created offers that I absolutely love that I know can help people. If you want to do it, great. If you don't want to do it, that's okay. Um, but if I had that self-worth attached to it, oh, that would be really depressing every time that somebody said no. I'd be like, oh, what am I doing wrong? How am I going to do it? And the same with kind of learning not to apologize and to go, this is who I am and what I do. And it's okay if you don't like it. We don't need to then get really aggressive, but we're like, we've all got our own opinions.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. And I think it probably took me quite a long time in my career to really understand that like feedback often is a gift.
Yeah.
You know, and be it about your professional capability or whatever project you're working on, and the ability to take it and not take it personally. And
Yeah.
you can use it or not, it's up to you. And I suppose a good question, I think, to follow up on this and possibly to round the conversation off is, if we see somebody apologising a lot, or we see it in an email, or we can see somebody's been sat in a meeting for an hour, they've not said anything, but we know they're full of good ideas and they're really talented, like, what can we do? How can we channel our inner Tara and get them to, yeah, to do all the things we've spoken about in this conversation?
Yeah. So I would say there are probably three things. One is if it's in a meeting and there's lots of people, don't call them out for saying sorry, but just support what they've said. So to go, actually, can I just build on that? Because I really loved what Marcella just said. So I think we should make sure that we've taken action. We're actually going to do this thing. So I think if you see somebody going, they've done themselves a disservice by apologizing beforehand, be their champion, support what they've said, and kind of call it back out. So I think that's one thing that you can do in the moment in a big room. Another thing, which is something that I did all the time in corporate, is I would take people to one side and go, hey, so I see you apologizing all the time. Like, what is going on there? And I used to effectively mentor people and coach people informally loads because I would see them doing this. This has been something I've been passionate about for like 10 years, like that stop apologizing. So I think in a friendly environment, going, hey, I spotted this. And you can say, hey, I just listened to this podcast where I found it really interesting and I'm now hyper aware of it and I've seen you do it. Like, what's going on there? So support people, but I'd say more in a one-to-one basis. And then the third one, I'm going to do a completely unapologetic plug, which is you can buy them my book.
Yay!
So I have the book. Can you see it? There you go.
Yeah.
Stop apologizing. So it's all about silencing your inner critic, finding your confidence, and stop saying sorry. So it's called Stop Apologizing. It's on Amazon. Because it is a book that you have to work through.
Mm.
It's not a case of just reading it and then going, oh yeah, it's nice, I'll do that. Like, in order to get the most out of it, you need to work through it. And it's quite funny because my brother had a copy and he took it on holiday with him. And he messaged me all the pages he'd folded down. So he went there and he's like, I'm on a beach and I'm reading it. So he read it back to back. He turned down all the pages that he wanted to go back to do the work. Seriously, half of the book was folded down. He went, I didn't realize I needed to work through this book. He's like, these are all the pages I want to go back to. And it's like, oh, I love that. So yeah, so my third thing would be like buy the book, read the book. This is just a like tiny little snippet of helping people stop apologizing.
Yeah, I think we're all buying the book, Tara. I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to get one for the office as well, so that
That's
people
a good
can,
idea.
yeah, tap into it. And it's like a toolkit, isn't it? And I've got books looking at my bookcase now. There's some books, there's certain moments in your career, or maybe on a project or in a situation, you just know there's a book for that, and you're like, right, I just need to go back and just, how am I going to approach this? And I think that Stop Apologizing book's going to be a great addition to that
Ah,
toolkit.
thank you. I love that. It was funny because when I was doing the contents, I don't like a really long contents page because I'm there going, oh, I don't want to read it. But actually, I wrote it like quite detailed in some of the tools because I have something, for example, sorry, dinner is late. It's like that's it, kind of one of the small kind of mini chapters. And I have that so that people go, oh, that resonated. Where do I find that again? Sorry, but I've just got a question. It's like, actually, sorry for interrupting. Sorry versus thank you. You're too aggressive. Like, it's actually bits that people can then hopefully flip back and go, oh yeah, that's relevant in that moment. So yeah, writing it like that, I did want it to be a toolkit.
And now that you've published your Stop Apologising book, have you got ambitions to do another book in the future, or kind of what's next for you?
Yeah, so two different answers, I'd say. So from a book perspective, yes, I definitely have another idea in my mind. But I'd say not yet. And it's about leadership, how to be an amazing leader. So that's one of the books that I am really, really passionate about writing one day. And it's going to be pocket size, it's going to be smaller, it's going to be, again, another kind of toolkit. So that's definitely something that I've got in mind. But what's next for me? I want to help more people. Like, my goal is to positively impact the world. And that starts with just one person. So hearing Louise talk today is like, positively impacted the world. Like, 'cause it starts with one person, it creates a ripple effect. So it's about helping more people. So I have got my coaching programs, retreats next year, lots of different activity that people can work with me, so I can help them to really elevate themselves and their success and their confidence. But also I want to go and work with more companies. So actually going into companies and running leadership programs, one-off sessions with maybe kind of diversity networks, working with leaders to help their teams, but just really thinking, how do we get that more positive culture embedded in different companies? So that's something that I'm really, really passionate about. And if you think big, then one of my goals is to do a TED Talk. So that is I'm putting it out there. One day I'll do a TED Talk. So not right now, but one day, that is my kind of big goal.
Well,
I
I
love
have
that.
no doubt that you will realise that ambition. I've learned a lot through talking to you, Tara, and it's just a really good reminder, actually, not just for me
Yeah.
personally, but the people I work with, um, how we can all support each other, and like you said, just realise that ambition. We will put a link to your book, a link to your site, a link to your LinkedIn. So, listeners, if you've been inspired or want more information, we'll make sure all the links are there. And of course, drop Tara a line if you think she could be a support to you or your business or institution. And yeah, just wish you all the very best in your next steps and look forward to following you.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah. And you can find me on tararawcoaching.com. So that's my website that you can kind of book a call if you want to as well. But thank you. I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's a conversation I talk for hours about. So yeah,
Yeah,
thank you for having me as a guest. I've enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you,
me too.
Tara. And thank you to
Thanks.
our listeners. I hope you've had a really good time hearing our conversation. Just to remind those, especially those new around here, the She Network is a network by women for women working in and with the higher education sector. We are very much here to support and share our experiences, and we really want to hear from you. So please let us know what you think of today's webinar, what future topics you'd like us to talk about, and also if you'd like to take part yourself. Wishing you a great rest of week. Saying goodbye from us all and see you again soon.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.